All right, let's talk about Spanish indirect object pronouns. These are the indirect object pronouns of the Spanish language. Me, te, le, nos, os, les, and se. Now let me tell you something. Os is used in Spain and les is mostly used in Latin America. All right? The words on the right are the English translations of the indirect object pronouns of the Spanish language. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you know what a pronoun is? Well, it is a little word that substitutes the name of a person or the name of an object, an animal. Let me give you an example. John buys an apple. He buys an apple. In the second example, he is substituting the word or the name John. It is a pronoun because it substitutes names of objects, people, animals, etc. Now you understand what a pronoun is. Now let's find out why these are called indirect object pronouns with an example. Now take a look at the word me. The one in blue is a direct object. The one in red is an indirect object. So in Spanish, indirect object pronouns are used to express for what or for whom, or to what or to whom the action of the sentence is done or performed. Now, this is very important and I want you to memorize it. To have an indirect object in a sentence, there must be a direct object. It can either appear in the sentence or it can be implied, okay? Now let's take a look at these examples. How do you find if the sentence has a direct object? First, you need to identify the action of the sentence. The action. Ella me pinta, she paints me. What is she doing? Oh, she's painting. Paint. Pinta, that is the action of the sentence. Then you need to ask yourself, what? Ella pinta what? She paints what? ¿Qué pinta ella? She paints what? Oh, she paints me. This is the direct object. In the second example, let's ask ourselves the same question to find out what the direct object is. She paints what? Oh, un paisaje, a landscape. Do you remember what an indirect or when an indirect object is used or for what? Oh, we use them to identify or to express for whom or for what something is done. So, ella pinta qué? She paints what? Oh, a landscape, un paisaje. For whom? For me. So, me, which means me in English, is the indirect object pronoun of the sentence. Now remember, don't forget that to have an indirect object, you need a direct object. It can appear in the sentence just as it appears here, or it can be implied. All right? So let's move on. Now, let's look at some other examples. Look at this conversation, all right? Let's practice a little bit, all right? ¿Has hablado con tus padres? Have you talked to your parents? No, pero les escribí una carta. No, but I wrote a letter for them. All right. So les is substituting something. What is it substituting? Remember, it is a pronoun, so it is substituting something. What is it substituting? Tus padres, right? Your parents, yes. So in this example, let's first identify the direct object. No, let's first identify the action. What is the action? What did the person do? Oh, he wrote, right? So he wrote what? A letter, yes. Una carta. Una carta is the direct object of the sentence. For whom? For the parents, right? But we didn't want to say parents in the second sentence, so we said les, right? Because we already know that we're talking about the parents, so we used a pronoun, right? We replaced that name with a pronoun. So I wrote what? A letter, una carta. For whom? Les, for them. Excellent. Second example. Look at this conversation. La ensalada está picante. Le eché pimienta. So the salad's spicy, I added pepper to it. Okay, let's identify first the action. What is the action? Added, right? Well, What is the person doing? Oh, he's adding something. What is he adding? Oh, pepper. That's the direct object. Remember, you need to ask what to find the direct object. So what is the person adding? Pepper. To what? To the salad, right? But we didn't want to say salad, so we used a pronoun instead. So le. To eat, right? Le. What is the indirect object? Le. Excellent. Very well done. So if you have any questions so far, don't doubt to write them in the comment section, and I will be happy to answer them as soon as possible. Now let's talk in more detail about me, te, nos, os. Okay? So the pronouns me, te, nos, os are not ambiguous. They're easy to understand. They have a direct translation in English. Me means me, you means te means you, nos means us, and os means you guys or you all, right? And here I have some examples for you. Ana te mandó una carta. Ana sent you a letter. Ana nos mandó una carta. Ana sent us a letter. Ana os mandó una carta. Ana sent you guys a letter. So remember, os is used in Spain. So these are not ambiguous, but les and le are. Oof, yeah, le can be translated into him, her, you, formal, and it. Les can be translated into them and you. Now let's look at some examples. Okay, let me tell you something before that. Since there's no way to know the meaning of le out of context, it is usually accompanied by a little phrase that clarifies the meaning of le. So we can simply say, Sara le prepara la comida. All right? Sara le prepara la comida. But depending on the little phrase that clarifies the meaning of le changes, right? Sara le prepara la comida a usted. Sara prepares the food for you. Sara le prepara la comida. Oh, to whom? A él. Sara prepares the food for him. Sara le prepara la comida a ella. Sara prepares the food for her, right? Sara le prepara la comida al perro. Sara prepares the food for the dog, for it, right? Now, you can use names of people instead. Sara le prepara la comida a Pedro. Sara prepares the food for Pedro. And Sara le prepara la comida a su esposo. Sara prepares the food for her husband. Now, what is the meaning of this sentence? And the literal translation of this sentence, and yes, in Spanish we repeat a lot, is this. Sara, you, prepares the food for you. Sara, him, prepares the food for him. Sara, her, prepares the food for her. I know it makes no sense in English, but that's the way we speak in Spanish. And if you notice, take a look. Where are pronouns usually placed? They're always placed, well, not always, but they're usually placed before the verb. And we'll talk about this in more detail after that. Now let's move on to les. Sara les escribe una carta a ustedes. Sara writes a letter for you all. And Sara les escribe una carta a ellos or a ellas. Sara writes a letter for them. If you say a ellos, you can mean a group of men or men and women. Or if you say a ellas, you only mean a group of women. Again, we use repetition in Spanish. The literal translation of Sara les escribe una carta a ustedes is Sara, you writes a letter for you. Or Sara them writes a letter for them. Now, what is the best way to learn Spanish indirect object pronouns? I always recommend my students to memorize fixed phrases. Phrases that have indirect object pronouns in them, and simply memorize them. And then it'll be easier for you to just use them. Now, if you want some practice, take a look at my blog. It is, you'll find a link to it in the description of the video. But before that, let's move on to the position. Like, where do we place these little words, right? Where do we place these where do we place these Spanish indirect object pronouns? Okay, first of all, in normal statements, in affirmative statements, we always place them before the verb, all right? Before the verb, always before the verb. You'll see them before the verb, all right? Usually before the verb. Now, if you're giving an order to someone like, oh, do this, do that, all right? You're giving an order to a person, like send him a message. Oh, if you're giving an order, you attach that little indirect object pronoun to the end of the verb. You attach it to the end. Now, if you're giving an order, but this order is negative, oh, you put it before the verb, all right? So just remember that for positive orders, attach it to the end of the verb. Attach it to the end of the verb also in infinitives and gerunds. Okay, what is an infinitive? It's a verb that it's found in its original form in Spanish. Escribir is the original form of the verb, and then when you conjugate it, that means when you change it to be ready to be used in sentences, it's not an infinitive anymore. So an infinitive is the original form of the verb, and in Spanish they end in ir, ar, or er. So attach it to the end on infinitives and gerunds. And last but not least, if you have two actions like quiero, to want, I want, querer, right? And escribir, you have two actions, well, you have two options. Either you put it at the beginning of this verb phrase, or you attach it to the end of the verb phrase. And if you want to have all these rules, they are listed out in my blog as well. Now se, okay. Se is an indirect object pronoun as well. And se has the same usage and meaning of le and les. But what happens? Le and les, when you use le and les, okay, look at this pattern. When you use le and les with any of these little words, lo, la, los, las, or you le and les turns into se, okay? It, what is the word for this? It transforms into se. Le and les transform into se when they are used with lo, la, los, las. And I have this pattern for you to follow, an easy to use pattern to use se, okay? So remember, le and les become se when they are used with the direct object lo, la, lo, and las. So this is the pattern. Se lo, se la, se los, se las. Yes? And then you just need to use a verb. All right? Let me give you an example. All right, let's look at an example. Le diste la receta a Juan. Did you give Juan the recipe? Okay. What is le? Le is Juan. So the literal translation of this question is him, gave, like him. Okay, we have a you right here that you cannot see, like we have a tú right here that you cannot see. The real question is, tú le diste la receta a Juan. How do we know that it's tú? Because of the conjugation of the verb. Diste. Yo di, tú diste, él dio, nosotros dimos, like I gave, you gave, he gave. But in Spanish we conjugate. Yo di, tú diste. So, tú diste. Tú le diste. That's the way we speak in Spanish. I know it sounds weird. You, him, gave the recipe to Juan. That's the literal translation. Sí, se la di. Yes. Him, it, I gave. I know it sounds like Yoda is speaking. So se means him, right? Se means him, just as here. Le means him. But le becomes se when it is combined. When it is combined with lo, la, los, las. Remember the pattern? Se, la. Okay, let's see another example. Les mandaste la foto a mis padres. Okay, we have another tú right here, but it is implied. Tú les mandaste la foto a mis padres. How do I know that we had an implied tú here? It is because of the conjugation again. Yo mandé, tú mandaste, él mandó. Okay, so we have tú mandaste, right? Les, what is les? It means them. So the literal translation of this question is you, them, sent the photo to my parents. I know it sounds so weird, but that's the way we speak in Spanish. That's why I always recommend my students to just memorize fixed phrases, and then it will make more sense in time. Now les becomes se, which means se means them, so this just transforms into se because it is used with a direct object, with the direct object la. See, se la mandé, yes. To them, it I sent. Yeah, imagine Yoda when you are speaking Spanish. And this is all for today. So we learn what the Spanish pronouns are, where they are placed, their meaning, when they need a little phrase so that we clarify their meaning. That is the case of le and les. And we also learn when does it happen that le and les become se. Remember, it is when we use them with the object pronouns lo, la, los, las. And if you want to have all of this information in text, you can visit my blog post, and I will make available a PDF so that you can download this information and have it handy. So if you like this video, if you enjoyed it, I know you probably have questions. Feel free to ask them in the comment section below. And I will see you guys next time.